You want to talk a little bit about the coming down the pike at us likely EUA to allow the vaccines for 5 to 11-year-olds.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out something that's increasingly sitting very badly with me. There has been obviously a tremendous amount of ink spilled and video produced of people disagreeing over what the correct response is to the evidence we have regarding the vaccines available to us, the disease, what their interaction is, right? Should we be vaccinating the very vulnerable, right? Should it be a ring pattern? Should we really be trying to vaccinate everybody in the middle of a pandemic? There are real arguments to be had about what the wise thing is, and there is no room for a real argument.
Have you seen a ring pattern proposed?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
The fact is there's lots of room to have an honest discussion about what the best way to deal with the tools we've got and the disease we face. Right? Yeah, there are lots of things we could do, and we are not having any of these discussions in an honorable fashion, and it's maddening. But here's what I see. Many people, including friends of ours, very smart people, some of whom do have the scientific chops to evaluate this stuff, and some of whom don't, have, in my opinion, and I assume our opinion, gotten this dead wrong. And they have understood the fictions that we are being sold as noble lies that we should probably embrace. What I don't understand is why at the point that we are being told that 5 to 11-year-olds should be vaccinated, that A, it's acceptable to vaccinate them, and B, that maybe this should be mandated. Mm-hmm. Why is this not waking people up who accepted the past excuse that these were noble lies designed to control a pandemic and that we didn't want to burden people with the nuances of the actual risk-benefit analysis? There's no defense, as far as I can see, for vaccinating people so young if they're healthy. If they are healthy, they will endure COVID very, very well, and they will acquire a durable kind of immunity from an encounter with it. And so the idea of putting them at risk of original antigenic sin in this case, of signing them up, if what you're going to have is immunity from the vaccines that then wanes, that then requires boosters, somebody 5 to 11 is going to need a whole lot longer series of boosters if we don't have an alternative coming down the pike. And frankly, should a good vaccine show up, you may limit their ability to take advantage of it because you will have already canalized their immune system in a direction. There is no defense. What's more, every booster carries the risk of adverse events. And we can argue about how many adverse events there are, but when the disease has essentially no risk for young children, the idea of exposing them to any significant risk of myocarditis or any other serious adverse event is very, very hard to justify.
So one thing that we were talking about off air was that, as you all can imagine, Brett and I have had a lot of conversations about this, some of them on air, but by far the majority of them off air. And we talk weekly about what the conditions might be that would prompt us to decide that it was necessary to get vaccinated with the current vaccines. And what we have both agreed to and didn't take even saying it aloud, although we have, was that the evidence is so overwhelming across so many domains that what we cannot imagine allowing is letting those near our children. That is, given the evidence for the danger of the pathogen to young people and the danger of the vaccines to young people, young men in particular, of which we have 2, that is a very normal parental response.
Yeah.
You may be able to get that near me, but do not get it near my children. Where is that response? I think this is the question that you are asking. Why do we not seem to be seeing that response in the public conversation as the age limit for these is dropping lower and lower.
Yeah, it's very strange. And I would just point out that there are other little nuances in here. There's a question about, the idea of being forced to the vaccine is obviously, one's freedoms are potentially on the line here. So it's not unreasonable to judge even an unacceptable level of risk against other costs. Probably in our case, if we were going to be forced, it would make sense to have one of us be vaccinated and the other one, just because we don't know what the long-term implications of this are. Nobody does. And just in terms of protecting our family from various possible outcomes, there's a question about what you do. And I don't know what the answer is, but it is so odd to see people who clearly have the capacity and the information to understand that something is wrong, to the extent that we are rushing to the idea that if vaccines are inherently good and this is just a vaccine and it makes sense for everybody to get it, that necessarily applies to people this young. And I hesitate to say this because I understand it can be inflammatory, but in some sense, this looks like, I think it would be generous to call it a religious response. Is this a kind of built-in response in which people are effectively making a sacrifice of their own children to some sort of belief system? And I feel the same way as I watch children leaving school, 19 and 20 of them, as I've been counting, masked, even though it's broad daylight with plenty of UV light. They're walking largely alone, and they're effectively at no risk of COVID, and this disease isn't particularly dangerous to them at all, and yet they appear not to be questioning. It's as if they are born into a family that has embraced a religious, or in this case, it's not religious because it hasn't stood the test of time. It's a cult structure.
Yeah, well, the rules, as they make less and less sense, definitely enhance compliance, and that's part of the point.